Hello everyone and welcome to my video. My name is Kay and today I'm going to be creating this gory look that you see before you. This is a recreation of a look I did a little over a year ago before I began learning about special effects in school. I wanted to see how my skills have changed over this past year, especially now that I have more special effects based products in my actual makeup kit. And I also wanted it to be more movie realistic and something you could actually play with other than something just to look at. So here you can see that I've inserted a picture from my Instagram of the original look. I did use a lot of the same products this time around, but I did also use a lot of different products. So the first time around, I created the depth using lipsticks and eyeshadows, just because I didn't have a lot of the cream-based products that I do now, as well as I only used like stage blood that you would get from your Halloween store. Whereas this time around I had fresh scab and liquid splatter blood, and it was just a lot better. The next thing you'll see me doing is grabbing a nude lip liner. You can use a nude lip liner or a nude eyeliner, it's up to you. I'm just going to be using it to draw a line down my leg to measure out the length that I want the rib and the skin to be. The reason I'm using nude is because I still want to be able to see it through the latex once it dries, but it'll also be easier to cover up when the time comes. Next, I'm just grabbing a steel cup. You can use anything you like, a disposable cup or one that you don't mind ruining. I'm going to be pouring some liquid latex into it. I have two different kinds, as you can see here, one by Jordan Cosmetics and one by Spirit Halloween. I just ended up using the one by Spirit. You're going to want to pour a generous amount into the cup, just because you'll probably fill it up once or twice after you've created the look. The first tool you're going to need is a triangle stippling sponge. What you're going to do with it is dip it into the latex and dot a few layers onto your leg around the area that you had mapped out. This will take a while to dry, but the thinner the layers and the longer you let them dry in between, the faster it'll dry. I know personally I get impatient and just dab layer after layer, but it does take longer to dry when you do it that way. Once you've dabbed a few layers, you want to leave the top one wet. Here you'll see I have Kleenex. You can use this, paper towel, tissue paper, or anything similar that you have. This is just what I had on hand. I ripped the Kleenex apart because the ones I had were 2-ply, which, as you may or may not know, has 4 layers. So I pulled it apart into different pieces and just laid it out on my leg. This will help you with making the layers thicker instead of spending hours trying to build up the latex. It'll give you more translucency to the look as well, whereas if you did too many layers of latex, it'll leave you with a yellow hue. You can also see that I'm tearing around the edges of the layer. I just did not want any clean edges. The rougher the edges, the more realistic it looks, because if it's too clean, then you can tell that it's fake. So the next thing you're going to want to do is grab another stippling sponge or the same one. You're going to dip back into the latex and just make sure that all of the Kleenex, paper towel, or whatever you're using is coated. You're going to want to let each layer dry in between. A life hack for this is to use a hair dryer. It does make the process a lot faster. I did not have my hair dryer, and I was also pressed on time, so I didn't wait between layers. I just did them all at once, and then I went outside and let it dry, but it did take quite a bit of time. So if you're in a pinch, don't do this. Use a hair dryer. Find a hair dryer or let it dry between layers. It will save you. The nude liner again. You can't tell on camera, but in person you can still see that line where I mapped everything out. I just want to use the liner to draw a V on the top and bottom of the latex look, so it almost looks like an arrow on both ends where we originally mapped, just so that we can tell where we want the cut to begin and end. Next, you'll see me grab some cotton balls, because it is an everyday item that most people have in their home, so it helped me achieve the whole look. Now what I'm doing is I'm ripping them into strips and then dipping them into latex and creating an outline around where I want the wound to be, right where I mapped it all out. This will give it some great edges, as well as stop you from accidentally ripping the whole piece off of your leg. Just think of it as the glue that holds everything together. Now that I'm done creating that border, I'm just going to go back into the latex with my stippling sponge and cover all of the cotton in latex. You really want to be generous again with it. This is going to take time to dry, but like I mentioned before, it'll be way faster to dry with a hairdryer. But this one did take quite a bit of time for me to let dry. So you're just going to stipple all around the inside a generous amount, because you really want that latex layer really thick for when you do go down and cut it to give you that rip skin. But you also want the outline to be very dry as well, and latex coated because if you accidentally cut into the cotton, you don't want anyone to be able to tell that it's cotton inside. You want it to look as if it's skin and to have more of that like peeled away skin texture. Just what I'm doing here while I'm waiting is grabbing another steel cup and pouring some colorless powder into it. The ones that I have here are by Jordan Cosmetics. The only reason I'm using two is because one was running low. You can use anything like the Ben Nye colorless powder or any translucent powder that you just have sitting around in your kit. The only reason I'm pouring it into the steel cup is because it is easier to access with the powder brush when it comes time to that. Here you can see I'm just grabbing some more Kleenex, and the cotton balls are still damp. I'm tearing the Kleenex into thin strips and just putting them all over the border of the wound, as well as bigger strips all over the center. And again, it's just to make the area thicker and easier to cut through when we get there. So once you've laid it all out, you're going to get another stippling sponge or someone again, dip it back into the latex and coat it and make sure that it dries. For this one, you only need to do the one layer of latex. You can do two if that's what you'd like, but this is all that I did. Here's just where I'm testing to see if the latex is dry by poking it with my finger. You really need it to be dry because this is the part where I'm going to start pulling at it on my leg and cutting it to create the incision so it looks like torn open flesh with exposed bone. At this point, the latex is dry, and I'm just going to grab a spatula and some scissors and get at it. Once I create that small rip in the skin, I don't want to keep using the spatula or the scissors to keep it straight. You kind of want it to look more torn. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your hands on each side and just start really ripping into it to give it a more torn and rugged edge. So as you can see, that's what I did from the top to the bottom. I can still see that line that I put down the middle, so that is the guideline that I'm going off of when I am cutting the line in the first place. And I'm also kind of following it when I do the rugged edges. I just, you don't want it to be perfectly straight. You want it to be jagged and look more realistic, because something too straight would not look realistic. It'd be almost too clean to look real. Anyways, I'm pulling it to the top and the bottom of where I had those little V's drawn in the first place. And as you can tell, it's starting to come together. Now that it is ripped open, I need to find a way to create the bone. So what I'm doing is mapping out where the bone will be by stippling latex, because I do need it to stick down to something. And then after that, I'm going to pull open the cotton balls again. And I'm just going to take a Kleenex and dip each cotton ball into some latex, put it across the top of the Kleenex, and then roll it into a very tight roll. And this is what I'm going to use to create the bone. It will be squishy, but no one's there to touch it. They're there to look at it. You need it to be durable, so when you bend your leg, it bends with you. So once I have it all rolled into the ball and as tight as I want it to be, I'm going to stipple some more latex down and just stick the roll to it. I'm trying to pull the latex up a bit and kind of tuck the roll underneath just so it has a seamless edge and doesn't look like, a burrito that I strapped onto my leg. After that, I'm just going to get some more latex and coat the fake bone in latex, because that, again, it needs to have the texture on it so that I can start coloring it. It won't be as terrible and it'll move with my body when I walk. At this point, I was struggling with really getting the bones straight, so I was trying to think of different ways to keep it that way. So I ended up grabbing a coffee filter because they're a little tougher, and again, it is an item you'd find around your house. I end up ripping it roughly around the edges into a straight line that would cover the bone, and I just lay it across the bone and leave enough room so it would wrap around it. I end up coating that in latex, and it does exactly what I need it to. After that, I'm going to grab more Kleenex and lay it over the bone and the raw area of my leg, because I do need that latex texture to create like a skin look, as well as be consistent with the ripped open flesh. I am then going to coat the ripped open flesh and the the exposed skin with it so that it kind of runs together into an even flat layer and not like something that was ripped off and has like nooks in it. I was trying to get rid of all the nooks and crannies because I knew that would be harder to paint as when we got to that part. Here's just a quick time lapse. I already put down the first layer of latex and let it dry as you saw in the last clip. I'm just layering a bit more Kleenex and a bit more latex, letting each layer dry and continuing until I'm ready for the next step. So enjoy. Here I was trying to find a way to make the bone a little more thicker and stiffer, enough so that when I walked it didn't break, but it kind of moved with my body but still looked like it was protruding. So I was going through everything that I had laying out around me. I did grab a bunch of odds and ends that I thought would help with this. So I ended up finding a coffee filter and thought, great, because it's tougher and stiffer and, you know, it's a lot thicker. So I ended up taking a lip liner and measuring it to the size of the bone and then just cutting it a little bit larger so that way it would curve and wrap around completely. And it ended up working out perfectly, and then I just took my stippling sponge again, dipped it back in the latex, and made sure to coat it. And then I took a metal spatula and kind of just smoothed it out and only creased it where I thought I needed to add definition. You don't have to use a metal spatula. You could use the bottom of a makeup brush or anything else like that. Here I'm just grabbing some more Kleenex and latex and adding it to where I need to taper things down and edit the edges, as well as flatten everything together and into one piece. It wasn't 100% necessary to do, but you may not even find yourself needing to do it at all. But I am a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to things like this, and I just like everything to look clean and as good as it can. So yeah. And then after that, you're going to notice me grabbing this white cream product. It's Cream Prosade, and I'm using a technique called bondoing. So basically what bondoing is, for a short definition, is when you take a spatula or any other flat, thick item, and you're going to rub it against the edges of your prosthetic if it's not blended into the skin properly. I really wanted to like fix some of the rough edges, and you just use your spatula and you mold it into the skin so that it blends in better and you can't tell that it is a prosthetic and that it's fake. It just helps add on to the realistic effect and creates a seamless look. Now that I've finished up with the latex and molding everything and everything is dried down the way that it was supposed to, this is when we're going to use that powder that I had originally set aside. So basically once the latex dries and the Prosade I use to bond out becomes tacky and sticky, and we don't want that when we start to paint it. So I'm going to be taking a powder brush that I don't 100% love or care about because it will get a little ruined in the process. And I'm dipping it into that loose powder and buffering it all over the leg where makeup was applied, as you can tell. You don't have to apply it as generously as I did, as you can see the cloud of powder that starts to surround me. Next, I'll be pulling out all of my grease paints. I'm going to be using them to color correct my skin. Some areas of my skin have a yellow undertone and some areas have a pink. My skin does have more of a yellow undertone, so I will be painting all of it a yellow undertone layer. And then after that, I'm going to take like a concealer brush and dip into more of a pinky nude skin tone color. And I'm just going to blot it everywhere on my legs and then grab a foundation stippling brush and really blend that into the skin. And then once I have that, it's not going to really look anything like my actual skin color. It's going to look like the undertone. So after that, I grab a foundation that is similar to my skin tone color. And I'm going to be buffing that all over as well, just where my skin would show, not on the inside because that would be red. And it's alright if it doesn't 100% match your skin tone seamlessly. Once you do add your bruising and discoloration, it's not even going to matter. You won't really notice. And plus, if this were a real wound and you actually did hurt yourself this badly, your skin would never look 100% the same as it did before. It would always look a little darker in that area just because it is bruised and it's dislocated, so most of it is dead skin. Once you've colored everything the way that you want it to be, you will have to powder between colors just because you don't want them to mix, and once you powder something, it's not going to move. It's going to stay there. It's not going to rub off unless you grab like a makeup remover, and especially the latex. It will sit and it will stay. The next thing you're going to notice me doing now that I've finished is grab some white grease paints. I'm just going to be painting them over the bone because the latex did leave a little bit of a yellow hue. I didn't really have to do that because the amount of blood it was coated in afterwards, you wouldn't really have been able to tell, but it did help with the overall look with making it really pop. So I'm just doing that, and then I'm dipping back into that powder and powdering over the white because it was a little more liquidier than the other grease paints and whatnot that I did use. And then after that, you're going to notice me pick up one of my Jordan Cosmetics grease wheels, and it's in more of the red tones. There's 4 red tones in it, and I ended up mixing 2 of them consistently. And basically what I did is I went all over the leg around the bone. It's alright if you do get a little bit on the bone just because, again, you will be covering it in blood, and if you're bleeding, it is going to cover the bone. Then after I do that, I start to paint in the insides of the skin flap because, again, it's ripped from the inside out. That would be covered. You wouldn't want to keep that skin tone color. That's why I didn't color correct it. So it is covered. It's supposed to look like a muscly, bloody mess. So it's alright to be messy with it. It's alright if you get it on the outside of the hole. You're bleeding, you're dying, it's gonna get everywhere. Once you've finished adding the depth to the wound, the next thing I'm doing is I'm grabbing 2 different Jordan Cosmetics grease wheels. And I grabbed one with like yellows and blues in it, and I'm just grabbing like this yellowy green tone and then a green tone and then all of the purples, and I'm just swatching them on the back of my hand because I'm going to be consistently dipping into all of them. It doesn't really matter which ones I dip in at a time. Just because they all create a similar bruising effect. The different purples add different depth, so I would dip into a bunch of them at once so that each part of the brush did catch a different part. So I didn't look too consistent with only 2-3 colors. It had many colors because when you bruise yourself, it has more than just one shade of purple. It might have like 5, and it has different shades of yellow. So basically anywhere that I made purple, I made sure that the outline of the purple was yellowing because yellow adds like an age to it, and it just overall really helps the look. And once I figured out how I wanted the bruising, I went back in and I bruised up the edges of the skin flaps because where I originally ripped it open, if your leg busted open like that, it would instantly bruise. So I took some purple and I really like blended it into the edges. I ended up folding a coffee filter in half and leaning it in there just so I wouldn't get purple on the bone because your bone doesn't turn purple when it bleeds because that's a bruising color. So I ended up blending that into the skin, and I thought that it looked a little too dark for my eye. I'm noticing now on camera that it didn't look that bad, but I ended up just taking some more of my foundation lightly and lightly blending it back over with the stippling brush. I did also use a stippling brush in the process to help really blend out those bruises because you want to blend, blend, blend. Even when you think it looks good, blend a little bit more because you never know. Some spots might be a little too patchy. My camera is a little bit older, so it did die throughout the filming process just because the batteries got a lot of wear and tear. So, but I did refilm the parts that I missed. So basically what I did was I took some of the black grease paint and I started to add some more definition to the bone. It does look a little dramatic, but in the end it does really weigh itself down because it will be covered again. I tried to blend it out as much as I can, but you know, it is what it is. I also took the black and I took a small brush and I really rubbed it into the crease just to add that darkness to where I put in the red originally. Think of it like when you're contouring your face, you want it to sink in areas to make it look deeper. So basically I put the black everywhere that I wanted the wound to look deeper so that it would really add that depth to it so it looked more realistic and like it was deep in my leg and not just sitting on top of it like it is. Once I finished up with all of my bruising and everything and it was where I wanted it to be, this is where the fun parts begin. So this is when I pull out my fresh scab, my blood, my yellow grease paints again, and basically what I'm going to do is first thing I'm grabbing is Ben Nye Fresh Scab, and I'm just putting it all over my hand, and I'm filling in the inside of where the red is, where I originally painted it with it, and I'm coating it in there and sculpting it with my spatula, and then I'm putting it around the edges where scab might get from like a burn or a cut, depending on what route you want to take this from. And then once I've done that, I start taking some of it and I'm putting it up the bone, as well as putting some grease paint up the bone, because I really want to coat it in blood and make it look like what it would look like if you were hurt and if this were to actually happen to you. And then after that, I have blood in a bottle. It's not really by one brand. I just ended up squirting a bunch of Halloween bloods that I had originally had in tubes into a spray bottle because I like giving it that spray effect. So I end up squirting that all over the inside of the skin and down my legs a bit, just to give it more of that drip effect. And once I pour a whole bunch into the actual wound, I start to move my leg around so that it does drip outside of the wound and give it more of a realistic feel. I also sprayed some on the edge of where we did cut it open, because if you were cut open there, it would instantly start to bleed before it fully ripped open. That's just how it is. So I end up doing that, and I really think that that helped complete and finish the look. And if you accidentally get some on your fingers in the way, you can just rub your finger across your leg to wipe it off, because adding fingerprints really does help, because I feel like if you did hurt yourself, you'd be like, oh my god, and put your hand on your leg. It just really helps capture the feel. I really love how this makeup look turned out. I definitely think that you can see that I've shown progress since last year when I did it, and you can tell that I have that educational background, as well as you can tell that my makeup products got a lot better. I love how gory this one was and how the bone looks a little more real. I think the one thing I would have changed is, instead of using a black to outline the bone, I probably would have used a gray. Although I do like the black in it, I just feel like the gray would have overall given it a little bit more of a realistic feel. But if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Welcome to my first video. This editor literally killed me. And I don't know if you can tell the different changes of my tone in the voice. I did try to help and edit it as much as I could, but I've been moving to different areas all over my house just to find quiet to end up recording this. So, hoping for the best. Thanks.